For a long time, Bolivian political history forged the stigma of a chronically unstable country, dominated by civil and military chieftains, faced with provincial struggles and stimulated by greed without limit. Nowadays, the plurinational state of Bolivia, according to CEPAL, is a unitary republic that adopts a representative democratic form for its government, but in reality is a dictatorship. Although in Bolivia, 9 different parties coexist, being the Nationalist Democratic Action, Popular University Consensus, National Unity Front, Victory Front, Left Revolutionary Front, Social Democratic Movement, Revolutionary Nationalist Movement, Christian Democratic Party, and the last, Movement to Socialism. The Movement to Socialism was founded in 1987 by the current dictator of Bolivia, Evo Morales, who has been in power since 2006. The results of the 2005 elections marked the virtual disappearance of the party system of the last 2 decades. Analyzing the opinion of the actors in Bolivia regarding re-election is important to determine the political system. The fact that other parties have a smaller participation in politics and their opinion is not relevant for public life, although the majority of the population agrees, indicates a dictatorial regime. This evaporation of the traditional party system was almost inevitable, since the political groupings that made it up were considered by most Bolivians as the causes for the government crisis in recent years. These parties failed to meet several of its functions, such as developing and generating political agendas that had the support of a large proportion of the population.
Pressure groups do not seek the seizure of power but rather press on the political power, in an effort to obtain certain benefits in favor of its components and activities, or better correct any inequalities or alleged injustices. In this way, the indigenous population, which is the majority in this country, is one of the main groups with significant influences in the political system. In Bolivia, the century-old struggle of indigenous peoples and the pressure exerted in recent years by indigenous social movements have managed to register their demands and rights in the national social and political agenda, generating a dynamic around the exercise of their collective rights as peoples, which strongly affects the discussion that is taking place today around the nature of Bolivian society, democracy, and the state itself.
The situation of the working class is similar. For much of the 20th century, miners were central actors in the economy, society, and politics of Bolivia, Chile, and Peru. Once the unions were formed from a migrant workforce with deep ethnic roots, the labor dispute assumed characteristics closely associated with the geographical isolation of the mines, the strategic nature of mining in the economies of the 3 countries. Likewise, the impact of his political behavior was decisive in some moments of history. In November 2005, Evo Morales signed an alliance with relocated miners, with whom he undertook to eliminate the validity of Decree 21060, which according to leaders of the sector snatched work sources. The alliances of the party were aimed, in addition to achieving the support at the polls, to engage the social sectors in joint government programs, which will give the MAS a space of social governance. Journalists are another group that should not be set aside in the current panorama of Bolivia. In 2014, more than half of journalists in Bolivia said they suffered censorship or self-censorship during their professional life, according to a presentation by researcher Virginie Poyeton. The graph 3 shows the issues that have suffered limitations, according to journalists. According to Poyeton's investigation, 54% of the journalists consulted admitted having been censored during the exercise of their profession, while 59% admitted to self-censorship. 83% said they had knowledge of colleagues who were censored, something that could indicate a larger real number of censures, the researcher said in a note about the study. The two largest sources of media censorship in Bolivia were national, departmental, and local government authorities, as well as public and private advertisers. In addition, 85% of journalists interviewed by Poyeton complained about the difficulty of obtaining access to public sources, especially the police, 62%, and the armed forces, 61%. Poyeton is a researcher at the NGO Comundo of the UNIR Bolivia Foundation, and her book was based on an investigation with the foundation in which anonymous surveys were carried out with 54 journalists from the cities of Santa Cruz, Cochabamba, and La Paz.
Among citizen actors with a strong influence in the actual political situation of Bolivia, we can find UNIR Foundation. It is a private, independent, and non-profit organization that works in the fields of research, analysis, and constructive transformation of conflicts, the right to information and communication, and the development of capacities in peace education, with the mission of contribute to the construction of a united, intercultural, and equitable country, guided by values that enable a peaceful coexistence between Bolivians. In the long term, it seeks to achieve a democratic process that ensures congruence between values, behaviors, and institutionality. Rafael Puente. Rafael Puente is a Bolivian who has been a radical militant for more than 70 years, defending at all times what was convenient for his country and national deputy for 4 years by the United Left Front in neoliberal times. With the arrival of Evo Morales to the government, he was appointed Vice Minister of Interior the first year and Presidential Representative and Interim Prefect of Cochabamba later. No one denies the importance of the early years of the government, the economic leap, and the inclusion that has been achieved, but after that the total power has intoxicated this process, he said.
Marco Bomari, law student, leader, and current president of the Potosino Civic Committee, he previously held the portfolio of vice-president and was part of different pressure measures to vindicate demands of the Potosino people. For many, especially for the movement to socialism, there is a constitution when they are interested, and when it does not exist. Democracy isn't throwing a seat back in the country. Elena Argirakis, paleontologist and analytic of the social reality of Cruz and Bolivia. He was director of Ethnic and Transparency of the Government of Santa Cruz, author of several books analyzing Bolivian social reality. There was a stage of conquest of rights, but also historical discontextualization where some claims have been unliked. Carmelo Lenz, politician, Bolivian lawyer, and a former university professor. He is currently the governor of the Department of Beni since March 2013. It is no accident that we join a day in which in different parts of the country we are protesting against the illegal indefinite re-election established by the government against the constitution. Lenz promised to put all his experience and popularity in Beni at the service of a project that is both unitary and democratic. We have to be stronger and better than the mass. Before trying to gain power from the ruling party, he said, without unity, only defeat awaits us. There are just some examples of leadership figures. From the point of view of many Bolivian social analysts and actors, democracy in the country has receded and taken many steps back, since state policies do not currently respect constitutional rights. Others, who support the so-called process of change, agree that the country's democratic progress has generated an inclusive and transcendental scenario for those forgotten groups, and that today, they enjoy rights previously denied and censored by some authorities in the office. From any perspective, the analysis of democracy in Bolivia shows the society as a whole. Presence, political participation, access to rights, decision-making, and other aspects that take the system have a total inclusion of the population or not.